Welcome to Where Process Meets Application. I'm your host, Chanda-Louise. This is the business and entrepreneurship segment of I Read the Whole Bible Every Year. This month, we're exploring what intentional reflection looks like within our entrepreneurial journey through the lens of patterns. So today, I want to go ahead and introduce to you guys our guest for this episode. With that in mind, here is Erwin Rodriguez, lovely known as Pastor Erwin. Now,
Good evening.
I'll give a quick background. Pastor Erwin is an experienced business professional with a broad range of skills and a demonstrated history of success working in the music and nonprofit industry, skilled in digital marketing and production, digital supply chain, video production, editing, social media analyst and
Oh
manager,
my. Oh my.
experience
Oh my.
experience in brand marketing, content
Yeah.
creation, and
Yeah.
management and public speaking. And to be honest,
Yeah.
the list goes on. Husband,
Yeah.
father,
Yeah.
pastor,
I
student.
know. I know. I know.
Pastor Erwin. All
I
right, so
know.
Pastor Erwin, please introduce yourself.
well, well, thank you so much for that just amazing introduction. But yeah, so I am Pastor Erwin. I am a father. I'm a husband first. I'm a father second, and I'm just a humble servant of the Lord. Is probably the greatest title that you could ever give me is just to being a believer and a follower of Jesus. If I had to pick three things to be known for, I would pick those three. It's husband, father, follower of Jesus. And if I had to put something in first, it would obviously be follower of Jesus, which speaks to everything else. But yeah, so just my internal life, my anchor is always connected to my relationship with the Lord, and just being a loving husband and being a loving father. So those are the three things that matter to me the most. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Pastor Erwin, thank you. Well, okay, so just to give our audience a little bit of background, I met Pastor Erwin within the teen ministry at Christ Church. One thing that really stood out to me about Pastor Erwin was his creativity. So prior to my joining the ministry, I thought I was an innovator. And I thought, like,
Come on now.
you know, I thought like I was a structured disruptor. And mainly because I would always come into new environments and I would always think about all the different things that we can put in place and push this forward and all that stuff. And in my mind, I always felt like I'd go into these new areas and I would just get shut down. At least that's how I perceived it, right?
Right,
But
right.
fast forward to Pastor Erwin, he was like completely open to new ideas. Like, you're laughing, it's true.
It's true. Yeah,
Creativity and
yeah, it's true.
implementation. And it was almost scary. I have to be honest. You know,
It's like yeah, there would be one idea, I'd be like, let's do it, let's try it, let's see
let's
what
do
happens.
it. Let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a
And,
shot.
after a while, I would be like, okay, Pastor, pump your brakes. But it was really because Pastor Irwin showed me how to create structure around creative ideas. So it's like one thing to come up with ideas, it's another to execute,
Yep,
and I
yep.
think it was like at that moment where I was like, spontaneity, creativity, and innovation need structure
Yeah,
in order to thrive.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'll start it off. Pastor Irwin, you are a creative, in my opinion, by definition. And I think you definitely thrive in executing creative visions. So, what does that process look like for you from like beginning to end?
I think from beginning to end, thank you. That's a good question. It's all about the journey. It's all
Okay.
about the journey that you go on, the creative journey, and watching something that comes from nothing and
Mm,
watching it become real. That's where true creativity and innovation. We're actually you know taking we're taking from the playbook of Genesis. We are creative agents. We are creating things that were not there, and we're causing them to be there. That was actually a gift that all of us have. All of us have that potential to look into the universe, to look into the world, and see a void and saying and saying this void is not going to be here anymore. Let there be this.
Mm.
And
The,
all of us have that creativity. All of us have that power. Now, how many of us use that for good? How many of us use
okay.
that? How many of us use that creativity and that power to actually bring value into the world? That's a different story. But God, in His infinite wisdom, saw it fit to make us in His likeness and image. Think about that for a moment. So that means that you, Chanda, myself, all of us have the ability and the power to create change and to be agents of change in our world. And we live in, and as you know, we live in a very broken world. And so we have the ability, whether you're a believer or not, you don't even have to be a believer, but your fingerprints, God's fingerprints are all over you. It's all over
Mm.
you. And the fact that you get excited about bringing something into the world, that didn't come from a void. God put that in you. And the moment you see someone impacted by that, and you kind of get this jolt when you see another individual just get excited over something maybe that you did or something that you brought into the world, and they get impacted or educated or they get inspired. That was put in you by God Himself to do that. Um, and so when I think about the process of just creativity to creation, it starts with curiosity.
Oh,
it
okay.
it starts with curiosity. It's looking at something in a different way that where ordinarily people would ignore it, or ordinarily somebody would look at a space and think it's just a space, it's just a void. That's just like that's our creator, right? He There was a void, there was nothing, and then he didn't see nothing. He said there is something. I'm going to cause it to be something. And I think that it's just for us to have that curiosity about things that are empty, that curiosity to look at things that are broken, and to have the the God-given power to look at those things that are broken and to look at them as beautiful mosaics that you could put together and reposition them, um, recalibrate them, reformat them, and do it in a way that now it has usefulness, right?
Wow.
And so now so for me, whenever I engage a problem, whether it's academic, financial, spiritual, I always engage it with that in my mind. It's a problem. And now I'm curious about the problem. I become passionate about the problem. I become curious and passionate enough where now I want to understand and I want to look at ways that to answer that problem. In its simplest sense, it's just being the type of person in the room that is willing and committed to be a problem solver. We know a lot of people in the world that are problem complainers. We have enough of them in the world, but we need more problem solvers that are passionate about being curious, right? Looking at the thing that is missing, um, being curious enough to look at what could be filled when something is empty, and
Wow.
being curious enough to look at um, what elements are available to you. Now, when we move from curiosity, and now we're going to move towards, uh, what is available to you, resources that are available to you, what is currently in your hand, what is accessible to you that you can now do. So we have to believe that God didn't just give you a dream, but He also gave you the resources to fulfill that dream. And so we have to now look at what's in our hands, right? That's the same story that if you look at the book of Exodus, when God had already desired in His heart that his problem solver was going to be Moses,
Okay.
and Moses was not looking to solve problems, but his but the thing is that Moses was the guy. He had the unique blend of leadership, life experience, um, and he had that unique blend of even just brokenness, and that he knew that if Moses allowed himself to be used by God, uh, there was nothing that he couldn't do. All he had to do was just say yes. And I think that
Okay.
that so when we look at so when I think about the creative process, there is that curiosity, right? You say you're open to looking at the problem that you're facing and being curious about it. What does that involve? That involves studying. That involves getting yourself educated on the issue, getting understanding the issue. It's not enough for us to say
Mm,
It's not enough for us to say there's a problem, but we got to now we got to understand the problem from both sides.
okay.
And I
So
think
then
that yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
the, so from a process standpoint, you start off with curiosity.
Yep.
From curiosity, you take it a step further and now start to research this to get some
Right.
insight.
Right. I start to research it. I start to get some insight.
Okay.
I start to familiarize myself. So again, it's a journey. So it's you're going through a journey to, allow yourself um, the room to,
Okay.
allow yourself the room to really, to take from one point to another point to another point. And it's in stages, right? It's in milestones. We like to call them, timelines in marketing. We call them timelines. And so in a way, I have an innate timeline in my DNA that tells me what I need to do at each point. Now, all of us have that ability, but our timelines are different the way that we all kind of go about it. Some of us are more methodical and we're structured. Some of us are not that methodical. But there is a method to how we come to an idea and how we execute it. And so sometimes I think we look at individuals that are just really organized and we wish that we were organized like them. And so, obviously that's how team is needed. That's, because then you need to have
Right.
someone like that in your life to kind of help create reality around your dream. But so it goes from that curiosity to the problem, and then I move from curiosity to just research, and then
Okay.
I want to become an expert in that particular thing. I want to at least research it to the degree where I can talk about it in my sleep.
Okay.
That's
Wow.
how. So here's what I'm trying to say though. You can't change anything unless you're curious. You can't change anything unless you care. I'm
Okay.
going to say it again. You can't change anything in your world, whether it's academic, financial, educational, athletic. You can't change anything unless you're curious about what's wrong and unless you care. Curiosity and
Okay.
caring work together. I'm so curious about the problem. I'm, similar to if you again going back to scripture, we see how God uses Moses' natural curiosity to show him this burning bush. This burning bush that honestly in the desert, bushes are burning all the time.
Okay.
But what was unique about this burning bush is that it wasn't consumed. And so
No.
Moses was curious about this. He said, "Let me go and check this out. This is crazy. Let me go and check this out. I'm gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna investigate. I'm gonna study it because I'm
Mm,
curious about it. I'm gonna go investigate, and that's where the dream comes to him. That's where God just downloads his mission. That's when God downloads what he's supposed to do for the rest of his life. Curious, caring, and just researching. And those simple elements you kind of see played out in the story of Moses. It's amazing. Like he just was curious about what he saw. He cared enough about it where he actually went to go see it, look at it. He researched it. He says, "Let me go check this out. This is crazy." And then here's the thing, though. God shared with Moses something that he cared about.
okay. Something
God,
that Moses cared about or something
God
God cared about?
something that God cared about. So he
Okay.
said, "Listen, I want to tell you something that makes you mad and makes me mad.
Mm,
It's almost like reminding you of the things that you were excited about at one time." So if we know the story of Moses, I'm using the story of Moses in creativity because he is the originator when it comes to God's people. There was no God's people. There was no people of Israel yet. They were not a tribe. They were not anything. They were slaves. They didn't become the most powerful nation in the world until until this moment happened, you know. And so you see where Moses is angry about the oppression of his people. His anger turns into purpose. So there is some element of anger. Again, we're talking about caring. There is an element of caring and anger that are kind of mixed together. And I think it's appropriate to talk about that today because, you know, um, even today, how our society and so many injustices that are happening in our world today, um, and you see what is happening in terms of like people just wanting answers and they're wanting solutions, and there is that blend of both caring and both righteous anger that we feel, um, when things are not happening as fast as we want them to happen, you know? And so, anyway, so Moses is now invited to remember the things that he cared about. Because what happened was, again, he ran away, right? If we know the story, he ran away, went off and did his thing for a long time. And then God brought him back. I love this story. God brought him back. And then he goes ahead and then he reminds him again about the thing he was upset about, in the beginning of the story, where Moses realizes, hey, this is wrong. This is a problem, you know. But guess what? He went about fixing that problem the wrong way. If
Okay.
we if if we read on in the story, we learn that Moses decided that he was going to fix the problem his way, and he was going to take matters into his own hands. So what happens? He takes a life instead of giving a life. He takes a life. So that's what causes him to run away. And so we learn that he comes back many years later. God brings him back like he always does all of us that runs away. He brings us back, and then he reminds us of the purpose that we originally were meant for. And I love that story because it is a creative story, because literally God used Moses to create a people that were not a people.
Okay. I love that.
So, and he didn't know it, but he was going to be the leader, and he was going to be the patriarch of this new nation, this new tribe. And so I just love that story because, um, we see how patient our Creator is with us, and then so Moses does this thing, and I think all of us as creatives, as entrepreneurs, and as people that try to do new things into the world face, and that is the no, right? So Moses feels inadequate, like all
Right.
of us do. He feels unready, unprepared, uneducated. He gives them a list of things that he's not, right? I can't talk. I can't lead. Gives them all the reasons why you should be picking somebody else. Somebody else should be fixing this guy. Somebody else should be coming up with this idea. It's definitely not me. And I love the fact that our creator was so insistent on saying, no, you're the guy. You're the guy. You're the
It's
one that I
you.
want. It's you. And so then he says, okay. And so God provides for him, um, a number of different resources. And he says to him, he gives him a team. He says, hey, look at Aaron. He's going to be a part of your squad. He's going to be on your team. He's going to be your executive assistant. You know, he's going to
Yeah.
help you. You're going to dictate to him, and he's going to write the memo. You know, he's going to speak on your behalf, whatever. And so you see how God provides the resources, the supernatural resources, to make a dream come true, to answer an issue, to answer a problem. So it goes from curiosity,
The
caring,
caring.
right, and then it goes to the next level, being courageous. It takes
Courageous.
it takes courage to go
Okay.
out and to actually now execute,
Yeah, it does. You're right. You're absolutely right.
to
So
execute.
caring,
Yeah,
curiosity, caring,
yeah.
courage.
Courage. If I had to say for your viewers, if there were three things that are part of my process, is really just being curious about the issue, curious about the problem, caring enough to research it, because you can't talk about something that you don't care about. That's the reality.
Right.
You can't. Uh, you can't contribute an idea, a thought, and we see this day in and day out where people are using words in such uh, people use words without thinking about what the
Mm,
ramifications of the words that they use, and so they just use them in ways that are not. It shows that they didn't take the time to actually educate themselves on the matter, and
okay.
they want to contribute to the noise. And so if you really really want to solve an issue, then care enough about it to research it. and
Okay.
so and so if you're going to research something, you're going to have to research both opposing views.
So
That
be
means that
open.
be open, right? Be open to not just the parts that you agree with, but also the parts that you disagree with, so that you can now have a holistic view of the whole thing. Because if you're just getting together with your crew that have just one perspective, then you're dismissing the other perspective. You're dismissing the other vantage point. And you got to understand something, that you need to have the whole panoramic view. And
Okay.
and if I if I go back to my my preacher's hat, the gospel is all about the panoramic view. God seeing from the foundations of the earth, He knew who He was going to bring to save the earth. He knew how He was going to do it. We had no idea how He was going to do it, but He already saw the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we're still
Okay.
kind of in that process where we're living the middle right now. And
We're going
so,
through the process. We're in
yeah,
that
we're going
journey.
right. We're in that right. There we go again. We're in that journey. So part of the journey is having the third part of that journey is having the courage to go out and doing it.
Okay.
Once you are curious about a problem, you went ahead and you care enough about it to carefully investigate. You've done your research, right? You've written it down. You've gotten all the different viewpoints. You've gotten all the different perspectives around it, and now you're formulating an idea or a plan. Now here's where it takes courage to go out and now do it. Go out and possibly even get your team. Go out and get the individuals that that you need to make it come true. Because the reality is, again, like I said before, going back to Moses, I love that story because Moses, God recognized that Moses couldn't do it by himself. Like, he had personality, he had a temperament uh, that would probably limit him, and he
Okay.
needed to have another individual in his life that had a different temperament, a different personality, that was probably a little bit more outgoing than him. That was probably a little bit more, maybe assertive. And so that was Aaron for him.
Yeah.
It's finding that individual that is the opposite of you. And I think the world needs that more than ever. We need to have people in our lives that are just not like you, Chanda.
That
You
makes
know?
sense. So we can expand, have different
Yeah.
review and grow. So let me
Right.
ask you,
Sure.
okay,
Go ahead.
so we've got caring, so
Hmm.
curiosity, caring, courage,
Hmm.
right? Is there anything more to the process for you?
For me, well, after I've gone through courage, right? So, and I've now I'm ready to go out and I'm ready to do what needs to get done. Um, you know,
The execution.
the execution. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
It's
let me
just
ask this. Yeah, go ahead,
sure.
sorry.
No, no, no. And then those are the three things that I kind of go through
Okay,
when I'm looking at a problem and I'm looking at a challenge in front of me. Um, and then here's the last part,
okay.
very important. It becomes my cause.
Ah, so you start to carry that mantle.
Yeah, it becomes my cause. So it becomes my why, right? We hear
Hmm.
about that term, what's your why? You ever heard, that slogan,
Yeah.
what's your why? So it becomes my cause. So that's the journey. Curious about it, I care about it, you know. I
Courageous.
I then you know just gather up as much bravery and courage to go and form a plan, and then here's the thing: it has to become my cause. It has to
Okay.
become my mission. It has to become my why. It has to become something that is not just. It has to be more than just a hobby at some point.
Okay.
Any innovation, the Wright brothers, Apple, it's more than just tinkering with stuff. These are
Yeah.
individuals that saw something and wanted to make something happen, and it became their cause. I admire those people that go into, like, you hear those stories of National Geographics, or any of those documentaries where you have these geologists or these researchers that go into the Amazon, and they'll study, like, the ant, and the ant is like their why for the rest of their lives. And I'm like floored. I'm floored with that level of passion, because they examine it to such a degree. It's kind of like the story of Washington Carver. You ever heard of Washington Carver?
I have.
Right. So Washington Carver, right? He was the individual that had come up with multiple ways of using the peanut, and it was sort of like a God-given dream that he had, and using the peanut and how many different ways to actually access the power of this peanut and using it in multiple ways. I'm talking about peanut gas, fuel, you know, and so the peanut, Chanda, became his why.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's in the history books. You can definitely, research that. So I think that all of us long for a why.
Yeah.
All of us long for a why. It is that thing that wakes you up in the morning.
I'm still here.
That's all
Sorry.
right. So it's that thing that wakes you up in the morning and just kind of powers you through all the different roadblocks that you experience in life. So
Okay.
it's great. You have all this stuff, you've done all this stuff, but unless what you're doing becomes your why or becomes your cause, it it will die within the year,
Okay. Wow. Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
it's statistical that usually businesses in the first year is the hardest year for businesses, and sometimes most businesses or uh, uh, um, those that want to be self-employed and start their own business usually within the first 2 years is the hardest because you're not making any money. it's
Yeah.
pure it's pure it's pure passion. You're being paid because this is your why, this is your cause, this is your contribution to the world.
Mm,
This is what saying, hey, this is what I'm leaving, this is me. You see what I'm saying? So this is
I
what's
do.
contributing, and it has to be more than just resources and money, although that's a byproduct of your why. But unless your why is contributing something of value into the world, at some point, uh, the economical benefits that come with your why, if your why is not contributing to the healthiness of another individual, another human being, you'll find yourself empty. And I've seen that time and time again. It's like, you know, um, that's why you have a Bernie Madoff, right? You have those
Yeah.
stories. That's why you have those stories of individuals that have it all. That story of who is that um, story of the individual that is traveling all over the world, tasting different dishes. I forgot what his name was. He
Oh,
used to have his own show. He used to
Anthony. Is it
Bourdain,
Anthony?
Anthony
Yeah.
Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain probably had the best job in the galaxy. Like you can't get a better job than traveling all over the world, eating
Trying
delicious
food.
food,
You're right.
eating delicious food, and then rubbing shoulders with famous people. Like I want that job. I want that job. Somebody call
I don't.
me.
I wouldn't mind it either.
Somebody call me. And yet he took his life. He committed suicide. That
Which is
wasn't
crazy.
that
Right.
wasn't that wasn't enough. That wasn't
It
enough.
wasn't fulfilling for him.
It wasn't
Hmm.
fulfilling for him. So it's important that our why is right. And
Okay.
the only way that we get our why to be right, even if you're not a believer, um, inherently all of us long to contribute something greater than ourselves in this world. Even if you're not a believer, for those of you that are watching, because I tend to always lean towards the individual that's not a believer whenever I think about business. But all of us have a desire to contribute something into this universe, and that's why again you'll ask me that question later on in terms of my MBA, but which is why now corporations are moving towards ethical marketing. They're moving towards
Ah.
this new trend of it's not about just making money. It's about
No, it's not.
contributing something into the world.
Making a
It's
difference.
not about just doing business as usual, but it's how you do
Yeah.
business,
It's true.
right?
It's true.
And so you see now consumers are now forcing companies to now follow suit, whereas
Hmm.
before they that wasn't the case before. Maybe you might have a few couple organizations that were doing that, but that wasn't the norm. Companies weren't really, they weren't highlighting these different
No,
things.
they weren't.
But now it's part of their marketing, and now it's part of their whole entire campaign. Is the whole entire strategy is how are we going to now do business in such a way where it's better for the environment, or it's better for society, or it's better for it's better for humanity. It reduces carbon footprint. So and again, that's all about the DNA of the creator in us. Because
Mm,
again, he gave to us the power to subdue this world in such a way where we would also have to care about this world. So
okay.
yeah, go ahead, subdue it. In other words, make it your own, do something in it, but remember, take care of it.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
that's still something that I think that's a mandate to humanity. That's a mandate from the creator to subdue this world, to make it your own, to do something amazing in it, to name the animals, right? In other words, to almost like put your stamp on something, right? Us naming something is putting our stamp, right? Because God is the one that names, but he gives us that mantle to name. Isn't that amazing? That God is
It
willing
is.
to relinquish his mantle of naming and creating, and he allows us to do the same. Why? You're taking a big risk, on me, on us. But when we really look at God from those lenses, we start to see a different kind of God that the world speaks about. And so it's an encouragement to those that are still kind of struggling in their faith, their relationship with Jesus, their relationship with God. They're not sure what they believe. Maybe they grew up in church, or maybe they kind of had a bad taste in their mouth in terms of religion. And I get that, man. I grew up in that, so I'm there with you. Um, but when we look at um, the way that God is described in the pages of the Bible, he is anything that we thought he would be. He's a loving father that gives good gifts. And so yeah, so that's my process. I know I
Okay.
went,
No,
I went,
it was
I
good.
went straight, I went straight theological with you, but that's my
Okay.
process. That's my
So let
process.
me let me let me try and connect that dot
I
again. So
know it.
curiosity,
Yep,
caring,
yep,
caring,
yep,
and then caring really becomes with the concept of doing your research and becoming a subject matter expert, and then
yep,
from there having the courage to
yep,
actually push through and now say, I'm going to face this and start to tackle it, and
yep,
then finally your why. So making this your actual cause.
yep.
So meaning there's a deeper reason that's pulling you to do this,
Right.
and
It's
that
more than
actually
just money.
keeps you.
It's more than
Yeah,
just
I
money.
agree.
It's more than
I
just money.
totally agree.
It's more than just getting a Benz. Although
Yeah.
nice, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't shrug my shoulders to a Benz or a Mercedes. But I'm just saying that the at the end of the day, everyone has to discover their why. Businesses have to discover their why.
Yeah.
Sometimes in order for us to even survive with what we're doing, we might have to rediscover our why and come back to it because we've drifted away from it. We've drifted
That's
from our
very relevant.
we've drifted away from our original why. And so a lot of businesses fold because they've drifted away from their original mission. And so they have to come back and they have to reassess, and every great company, every great corporation does that, where every couple of years they reassess their mission and vision. Are we doing what we said we were going to do? So they have to come back and they have to reassess. And I think as individuals, we
To
have to
do
do
the
the same
same.
thing. We got to do the same thing.
Okay. That ties right into this whole concept or theme that I have of reflection. So that makes sense. So let's
Sure.
pull it
Yep.
together. So
Yep.
I'm curious, through this process, have there been any patterns that you've noticed about yourself when you're going through this process? What are the patterns that you notice? Like, and then by patterns, like how you show up in a good way, how you show up in a bad way, like what have you noticed anything?
Right. I noticed that for me.
Hey there. So, this is definitely a long episode. So, we're actually going to end this episode here and tune in for part 2 this coming Friday. Have a great day. Bye.